I am J. Robert Oppenheimer, and this is my reckoning. In the summer of 1945, beneath the endless skies of New Mexico, a group of scientists gathered in the desert. They called it the Manhattan Project, a race to unlock the atom, to end a war, to change the world. At its heart stood one man, brilliant, complex, haunted, J. Robert Oppenheimer, physicist, visionary, the so-called father of the atomic bomb. On July 16th at 5:29 a.m., their creation came to life. A blinding flash lit the desert, and with it, humanity crossed a threshold it could never return from. This is the voice that followed, the echo of genius meeting guilt, the reckoning of a man who gave the world fire and spent the rest of his life wondering if he had burned it down. The desert remembers. Even now, when the wind slips across the sand at Los Alamos, I can still hear it, that trembling hum, the silence that came before creation. We stood in the dark that morning, men of equations and ambition, our faces half lit by the faint promise of dawn. Someone joked about sunburn, someone prayed, and I held my breath. When the light came, it wasn't light at all. It was the tearing open of reality, the birth of something that had no name. We measured the force at 25 kilotons, a number that meant nothing until it meant everything. A son born from mortal hands. I thought of the words before I said them. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. They weren't poetry. They were a confession. Years later, people would ask me how it felt. The first atomic test. How does one describe seeing God blink? They said it ended the war. They said it saved lives. They said we had achieved the impossible. But I didn't see victory. I saw light that devoured everything it touched. That night, when the others celebrated, I walked outside alone. The desert was still glowing in my mind, that impossible white. I looked at my hands. They shook, as if still holding the sun. When news came from Hiroshima, I couldn't speak. 140,000 souls, vaporized, burned, broken. In the photographs, the shadows of people were etched into the walls, absence preserved as art. Do you know what it's like to create a weapon that leaves ghosts as its signature? The world hailed us as heroes, but every cheer felt like a knife turned inward. Sometimes I imagine the first victim. A woman, perhaps, standing by the river, holding a child. She looks up and sees the sky splitting open. No warning, no mercy. In that instant, she and I are bound forever, creator and consequence. I see her when I close my eyes. She never speaks. She doesn't have to. At Los Alamos, we were gods with clipboards. We justified everything. We told ourselves that the Germans were near the same discovery. We said, if not us, someone else. We said, better to end the war than prolong it. It's astonishing how morality bends under the weight of necessity. The physicists, my brilliant colleagues, we had harnessed the atom, yes, but we had unshackled something older, something biblical. We tore the veil from creation, and behind it was fire. Washington wanted celebration. They dressed us in suits and handed us medals. They said, "You have given America peace." But peace born from fear is not peace. It's a hostage situation with time itself. The hydrogen bomb came next. 1,000 times stronger, they said. They asked for my counsel, and I refused. For that, they branded me a traitor. In a hearing room filled with men who once called me friend, I stood accused, not of crimes, but of conscience. They stripped me of my clearance. But how do you strip a man of what's already been taken? My soul had left Los Alamos long before the government took my badge. In the quiet years that followed, I returned often to that desert in my mind. The wind still howled. The sand still remembered. Sometimes I heard the laughter of young physicists, chasing formulas like children chasing fireflies. Other times I heard only the crackle, the echo of that first detonation replayed endlessly across history's stage. I began to see it differently. not as triumph or tragedy, but as inevitability. We had been racing toward that light long before I arrived. I was merely the instrument. Yet I wonder, was it worth it? That's the question they never stop asking. Was it worth it to end the war? To prevent another? To show humanity what it was capable of destroying? My answer shifts like sand. Some days I say yes, because I must believe that something so monstrous could serve a purpose. Other days I say no, because I hear the screams of Hiroshima in my dreams. And sometimes I say nothing at all, because silence is the only honest reply left to a man like me. They say guilt is a heavy thing, but it's not weight, it's echo. You carry it not on your shoulders, but in your blood. It hums when you touch a doorknob, when you hear thunder, when a light bulb flickers. It reminds you that you've seen too much. Once, late at night, I dreamed I stood before that first mushroom cloud again. But this time, it wasn't fire. It was a tree, vast, luminous, its roots spreading across the earth. From its branches hung pendulums of light, each one a life touched by what we made. Some glowed gently, others flickered and went dark. And from beneath, I could hear voices whispering, "We were never meant to know." I woke drenched in sweat. The dawn light spilling through my window looked too much like the desert again. I read the Bhagavad Gita often in those years, not for comfort, for understanding. The verse I quoted that morning has followed me like a shadow, but people forget the next line. After Krishna reveals his divine form, Arjuna trembles and asks, "What am I to do?" That question is the truest prayer I know. What is man to do when he becomes God for a moment? What is creation worth when it requires annihilation as its witness? Sometimes I visit the sea. The waves remind me that all power, no matter how terrible, is borrowed. The tide comes, the tide goes. Atoms split, atoms rejoin. The universe is indifferent to our brilliance. We built the bomb because we could. That's the tragedy. Not that it was used, but that it was inevitable once we understood it. We are a species forever reaching toward the forbidden flame, Prometheus with a lab coat. The world will forget my words, but not my work, and perhaps that is fitting. Because the light we unleashed no longer belongs to us. It belongs to history, to memory, to the ghosts of a sky that burned too bright. My wife once asked if I'd do it again. I told her yes and no, because the choice was never just mine. History builds its own machines. I was merely the hand that pressed the button. And to the young, those who build, who dream, who reach for the stars, remember that power, no matter how noble its birth, always asks for a price. Curiosity is sacred, but without wisdom, it becomes hunger. Learn, create, discover, but do not forget the faces behind the formulas, the hands that tremble beneath the weight of invention, the souls who vanish when knowledge outruns mercy. If I could speak to my younger self, I'd say this: brilliance without humility is fire without light, and the brightest flame, unguarded, will always burn the world that lit it. The true test of intelligence is not what you can make, but what you choose not to.